Hello and welcome to Wasted Plotential, where we discuss the wasted potential of our favourite plotlines. This is a subject I've been meaning to delve into for a few years, and now seems like the ideal time to do it in light of the recent confirmation that Kunimitsu is coming to Tekken 7. Namco has a serious issue when it comes to their female fighters aging. Both of their flagship fighters, Tekken and Soul Calibur, have had large time skips that serve to introduce a new generation of fighters. Soul Calibur 5 is set 17 years after SC4, while Tekken 3 is set 19 years after Tekken 2. Tekken 3 retained only 6 characters from the prior entry. 2 were women, and both had been frozen for the duration of the time skip to allow them to remain in their early to mid 20s. The rest of the female cast were either missing or replaced. Michelle was replaced by her daughter, June was replaced by her son and presumed dead, Kunimitsu was missing and presumed dead, and Angel was dead thanks to being part of the late Kazuya's soul. In the years since, the series has slowly added most of the dropped characters back onto the roster. Discounting the non-canonical tag tournament games, which don't even depict the remaining absentees at appropriate ages, the only characters still absent are the original King, Armor King and Kuma, and outdated Jack Robot, who are all dead and replaced by identical successors, as well as June, Michelle, Kunimitsu and Angel. But what about Kunimitsu in Tekken 7, you ask? Successor with the same name. It's the daughter of the original. It's interesting that the men can be as old as 105, but women aren't allowed over the age of 40. If June was still around, she'd be 43. Michelle would be 41. Nina and Anna would be 43 and 41 respectively if they hadn't been frozen. Kazumi Mishima, Tekken 7's final boss, would be in her 60s or 70s if she hadn't been dead for 40 years. Eliza is an ancient vampire who is physically in her 20s. Master Raven could be older, but her age is unknown. The oldest woman playable in the canonical entry without shenanigans is probably Kazumi if she was around 31 like her husband when she died. The oldest man is Wang Jinrei at the aforementioned 105. As for Soul Calibur 5, we had 15 returning characters from past entries, with 4 being women. Tira is 34, Hilda is 35, Amy is alleged to be 24, but that would make her 7 in SC4 and I refuse to accept that, but she was certainly young enough to be under the age 40 threshold. And Ivy should be 49, but she stopped aging when she was 32 for reasons that I'm pretty sure were never given. Talon would be 32 if she wasn't cut, Shanghua would be 37 if she wasn't replaced by Leixia, Songmina would be exactly 40 if she wasn't cut, Setsuko would be 41 if she wasn't cut, Sophia and Cassandra would be 42 and 38 respectively if they hadn't been replaced by Patroclus and Pyrrha, and Taki would be 46 if she wasn't replaced by Natsu. And then they rebooted with SC6, setting everyone back to their ages in SC1. The oldest playable woman in the series without shenanigans is Aurelia from Chronicles of the Sword at 36. The oldest man is between Voldo at 67 and Edgemaster, whose age is unlisted. It's not just Namco, of course, they're just the most egregious example in fighting games thanks to the time skips. I suspect this is a cultural thing. Japan has that asinine Christmas cake analogy, so it's probably related to that. If she ain't hot no more, why even include her? I don't know, maybe because she can still fight? In a fighting game? You cretin. Dead or Alive doesn't have any human ladies over the age of 26, while the guys can be as old as 67. This is probably why DOA 1 to 4 take place in 1 year and 5 to 6 take place 2 years after. The characters can't get old and saggy if time doesn't fucking pass. Not that that'll ever happen anyway, since most of the characters in the series are between 18 and 20 because they can't release in certain countries if they sexualize characters under 18, and they are so desperate to do so that they'll label what is clearly a 14-year-old as 18 to get by. Street Fighter did a new generation thing, but that only moved forward a few years, so the oldest lady is still probably Chun-Li or Juri, who are maybe 30, while Oro is 140. This is even an issue outside of fighting games. In Samurai Warriors, even when characters finally age in Spirits of Sanada, it's disproportionate. These are the 4 characters we meet as children. Here they are in their 20s, and here they are in their 40s. Its sister series, Dynasty Warriors, is even worse for this. This is Zhang Fei and his family. If you aren't familiar with these characters, would you ever guess that this is a nuclear family? Yes, this is a husband and wife with their 2 kids. And worse, would you ever guess that the youngest one here is the mother? God, Xiaoji's a fucking nightmare in this game. Part of this is the generally bitchified art style, but the men can be white-haired from age while the women never look over 32. This is why I dread them including the wives of hot dad Sunjian and Ujiyasu. They look like they were their daughters, not their cool middle-aged wives who can kick as much ass as their husbands can. Meanwhile, in the West, thanks to the time skip in Mortal Kombat X, Sonya Blade is around 60 in MK11 and is still active and kicking ass. It's one of the few things I can give NetherRealm credit for. Now if only they'd let her visibly age as well. But what's the point of this video? The problem here is that the female cast have to be written out of the series when they approach that threshold of middle age, no matter what interesting story developments could be going on. And worst of all, it's clear that they don't have any real idea for the long-term narratives of most of the successors. Michelle Chang is a fighter seeking to avenge her father and depose the Mishimas encroaching on her tribe's land. She adopts a child and is never heard from again. This child saves her abducted mother, attempts to restore the rainforest, and then drops that to become a Twitch thought. Kunimitsu is a traitor to her clan who is trying to steal her old mentor's sword. She disappears without explanation and has her daughter show up to take her place 20 years later. Jun Kazuma is a young woman trying to save the soul of Kazuya Mishima as he struggles with the devil within. Both then seemingly die between games, but they conceive a son together before then. Kazuya comes back after missing only one game, but Jun remains missing. She barely gets brought up again after Tekken 4, and they gave her moveset to a younger relative who has no real significance despite being the cousin of the main character. Meanwhile, characters like Jinrei and Ganryu are still around. The former was the best friend of Heihachi's father, but still does nothing about the family's cataclysmic feud, while the latter's entire story can be neatly summarised in a fucking 2-year-old meme, which actually works as a summary of the company's attitude towards their entire female cast actually. Sophia Alexandra is a warrior chosen by the gods to destroy Soul Edge, who is then manipulated into protecting the evil sword to save her children, thereby pitting her against her own sister, whom she is also desperate to protect. Then she dies and her sister is sucked into the void and ends up briefly in the second timeline before disappearing forever. And their replacements are the most useless fighter in the series and the biggest cunt in the series. Meanwhile, Cervantes is allowed to stick around despite having done nothing for the narrative since the first game, and Mitsurugi does too despite having done nothing ever. Again, it's something MKX did better because the predecessor characters don't just get written out. They actually get to interact with their successors, so we're at least getting something different to make up for what might have been lost by the redirection of their personal narratives. You know a situation's bad when I have to say that NetherRealm is doing it better. So what can be done about this? First, someone needs to tell the devs to knock it the fuck off, because even leaving aside the sexism of it all, this is just wasting so many potentially great characters, and all because the devs seem to think that people wouldn't want to play as an older lady. They're delusional and need to be told to shut up. Soul Calibur has the opportunity to undo the damage in its new timeline. Tekken should just bring Michelle and June back. No shenanigans, no bullshit. Bring them back at the appropriate ages and let their stories continue. And NetherRealm should stop cowering out and actually let characters age naturally in their upcoming new timeline. Meanwhile, half the Naruto games published by Namco let you play as Chio, who is 73, showing up everybody. That's kinda pathetic. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they too can get cut during the time skip. Today's recommended video is Tekken Characters We Miss Episode 1, Angel by Looney Lily. Because it's true, like the other Tekken 2 girls that got cut, we miss Angel. She could have been really interesting once Kazuya took full control of his devil side. You know, as long as she wasn't handled as poorly as she was in the fucking comic. The fuck was that about? You seen that shit?